So finally, all the Straw Hats have made it safely to Wano.
Whoa. But,
About time everyone got reunited after all that's happened.
Whoa. Wait.
It just feels really good to have the entire crew back in one spot.
But Brago, what about Jinbei?
Who the hell is Jinbei?
I'm glad you asked. I think it goes without saying that Oda is a great fan of themes and patterns when it comes to writing his story. No matter if it's the distinct way he builds every single arc or his affinity for the number 3, Oda clearly likes to bring some elements of structure into his enormous world building. The example that you might be most familiar with though is the distinct pattern based on which he has been building the Straw Hat crew. Every Straw Hat has a tragic backstory that has left them emotionally struggling. Every Straw Hat has a dream that they can pursue by joining Luffy. But most importantly, every Straw Hat has stuck with Luffy and dedicated his life to him ever since meeting him. And that is where Jinbei comes into play. Because not only has he been the only new crew member to join after the time skip, but he also hasn't traveled with the crew even a single time. How is that? Why is Jinbei's arc so very different from the other Straw Hats, even though he fulfills pretty much all of the criteria that constitute a true Straw Hat? With the introduction of his character, Oda has deliberately broken the pattern for how a new Straw Hat is supposed to join the crew. As we will see, there are 3 big reasons for this. The purpose of the time skip, the complex political structures of the new world, but most importantly, Jinbei's selfless personality. Not only does all of this make him a unique member of the crew, but also an incredibly intricate character that keeps impacting the story in quite significant ways. And if we just take a step back, we will see that Jinbei's character actually embodies a central moral message that Oda tackles within the story. So let's take a closer look at the Helmsman of the Straw Hats, and what role he has to play in the story of One Piece. Oh, and before we get going, as you know, Jinbei is the last official member of the Straw Hats, so that would make this video the very last in this series. But since it seems like you guys are really enjoying watching these and I really love making them, I figured we might keep this up a little longer. So why not make this a bit of a challenge for all of us? If this video gets 2,000 likes within the first 24 hours, the next character analysis will be out within a week. A true challenge for you guys, I think, but especially one for me, since I usually take at least twice that time to make a video like this. Also, pause this video for a second, head down to the comment section and type in the character or group that you think I should be doing next. The comment with the most likes gets himself a video. Maybe already next week. So smash that like button. But now, let's dive right into the world of our karate-loving fishman. When we look at his backstory, we will not only see that it fulfills the requirements for being a Straw Hat, but also gives us the first clue to why Jinbei can sometimes feel a bit out of focus and hard to grasp in the story. Being the only non-human in the crew, next to Chopper who at least ate the human fruit, Jinbei is the first Straw Hat that brings the issue of racial inequality into the crew. As a result, his past as a fishman is very different from any of the other Straw Hats. Jinbei grew up as an orphan on Fishman Island, together with Arlong and Fisher Tiger. From an early age on, he practiced fishman karate, a powerful martial art that he managed to master like no other. When he grew older, he joined the Royal Military, but left after a few years, after his friend Fisher Tiger invaded Marie Joie, and he decided to join the Sun Pirates instead. Having witnessed all the injustice that the fishmen had to suffer by the hand of the humans, young Jinbei is rather violent and hateful. We can see him brutally beating unconscious Marines, accusing them of tolerating slavery and the discrimination of his people. Slowly, however, that sentiment begins to change as Fisher Tiger passes his vision for peace between the races down to Jinbei. He manages to make him more aware of the endless cycle of hate and revenge between fishmen and humans that has to be broken. A few years later, the Sun Pirates meet the former human slave girl Koala. After taking her in, Jinbei realized how traumatized she was and starts to build a relationship with her. He starts to understand that not all humans are evil, and that fishmen aren't the only ones to suffer under the reign of the world government. When they finally reach Koala's village, however, they are ambushed by the Marines, and Fisher Tiger is fatally wounded in the process. After this heavy blow, Jinbei becomes the new captain of the Sun Pirates. Despite also having to witness Otohime's death by the hand of the Tenryubito later, Jinbei decides to take on his former captain's dream and try to break the Wheel of Hate. He becomes one of the shijibukai, joining forces with the world government that he despises so much in order to protect his people. However, when Whitebeard declares war over Ace's execution, Jinbei refuses to answer the government's call. After all, Whitebeard had been protecting Fishman Island under his flag. As a result, Jinbei is stripped of his rank and thrown into level 6 of Impel Down. He ends up in the same cell as Ace. This is where we first get to meet him in the story. So, as you can see, Jinbei clearly fulfills the criterion of having a tragic backstory. Not only have the fishmen been suffering as a race collectively for many centuries, but Jinbei also had to witness the consequences of racial inequality through the deaths of many people close to him. As we will see, racism is the great theme of Jinbei's character arc. However, before we can look at how Jinbei carries that theme throughout the plot, we first have to understand the kind of person he is in general.
Now guys, pay attention.
In a way, you could argue that Jinbei is what Brook might have been to the crew hadn't he been stranded in the Florian Triangle for 50 years of his life. The Fishman is a veteran pirate that has a very holistic understanding of the political and social workings of the One Piece world. Since his tragic past, as well as the responsibility for his people, weigh heavily on his shoulders, Jinbei usually presents himself as a very serious and proud warrior. However, if the circumstances allow for it, he shows us his lighthearted and gentle side at times. I would argue that this side comes a lot closer to what Jinbei's true self would really be if you took away all the hardship in his life. So if you ever wondered why Jinbei needs the Straw Hats in the first place, this is why. Jinbei can learn to enjoy life again and can allow himself to drop his shell when being with the crew. However, he also brings a lot to Luffy and the others in return. First and foremost, having been part of the Shijibukai for 11 years, Jinbei is not only a valuable source of knowledge and experience, but also brings significant fighting power to the crew. This is complemented by the fact that he has mastered Fishman karate, possibly making him one of the strongest fighters underwater. Apart from battle though, Jinbei also takes the role of the Helmsman. While the crew somehow managed so far without one, Whole Cake Island really showed us how valuable it can be to have this position filled with someone who knows what they're doing. Beside that though, being a fishman, Jinbei is also able to control the sea currents and even talk to the creatures of the ocean. All of these skills make him a true upgrade to the Sunny that will surely have to face more and more dangerous situations like these in the future. From an internal perspective, Jinbei's psychological need has been constantly shifting over the course of the story, which speaks for really well writing from Oda's side. It keeps the story vivid and gives us continuous character development. In general, Jinbei's need is always focused around his initial hatred towards the humans for what they did to his people. He needs to find a way to break the wheel of hatred inside himself before he can start breaking the wheel in general. Especially in his younger years, this moral need also affects those around him. We can see this in his violence against humans, but also in the indifference he shows for Otohime's dream to facilitate peace. However, as we all know, Jinbei gets a significant amount of character development over the course of time. As a result, his initial hate towards the humans slowly but steadily shifts, and finally, Jinbei acquires his dream, that is a crucial element of becoming a Straw Hat. His dream is to make coexistence, equality, and friendship between humans and fishmen possible, and put his people out of the misery under that they have been suffering for centuries. As a result, Jinbei has built a distinct set of values over the course of his life that fully reflect this changing character. Being a proud warrior of the sea, Jinbei has a strong sense of loyalty and duty. No matter the circumstances, Jinbei always tries to act honorable and true to his word. While he prioritizes the loyalty towards his people and towards Luffy over all else, he still tries to avoid going back on his word as hard as possible. We can see this in the relationship with the world government, to which he stayed faithful until they threatened to take down the man who was protecting his people. Or in his relationship with Big Mom, who he tries to compensate fairly by bringing her poneglyph before asking to leave her crew in order to join Luffy. This also reflects in Jinbei's strong belief in taking responsibility for your actions. He expects this from others, but mostly from himself. For example, he begs Nami for forgiveness for Arlong's treatment of her village, feeling responsible for letting Arlong go and do as he pleased. Due to his life experience, Jinbei also sees the importance of thoughtfulness in your actions. He always seems to think things through and then reach a conclusion to when and how something should be done. Did he join Luffy right on Fishman Island, which he clearly wanted to do? No, he waits for the right moment in order to not cause any trouble for Luffy or his people. And that already brings us to Jinbei's most defining trait, his sense of selflessness. Like no other character in the story does he center his life around that of others. Jinbei would die for his people or for Luffy. Their fate is what keeps him going. Whether it's protecting Luffy from a Kainu by taking the hit himself, or protecting his people from exploitation by becoming a pirate and allying himself with forces like the world government or Big Mom. Jinbei truly takes altruism to the next level. All this makes Jinbei a central driver of the plot and the story. He saves Luffy multiple times during the war at Marineford, ensuring his survival, and on Whole Cake Island is he not only the one to free Luffy and Nami from Big Mom's capture, but later also lets the crew safely escape the grasp of the Yonko by steering the Sunny and later staying behind to hold off their enemies. So now that we know what defines Jinbei as a character in the story, let's now finally look at his character arc.
Now, listen closely.
Based on his background and especially the intention behind the Fishman Island arc, the big theme of Jinbei's character is racial inequality, discrimination, and racism as a whole. Every aspect of his development arc revolves around events that highlight the different sides of the conflict between humans and fishmen. I don't want to get too deep into why the theme of Fishman Island was racism and how Oda draws parallels to our society. I think that would need an entire video on its own. But I think we can all agree that with Jinbei, Oda tries to introduce a character that struggles with the way his people are treated by the rest of the world, and at the same time tries to work for a better future. Obviously, his backstory sets the premise for this development. Being exposed to the cruelty towards his people, young Jinbei develops a deep hatefulness towards the humans. After inheriting Fisher Tiger's will and meeting the former slave girl Koala, however, Jinbei develops a more refined view of the humans. And while he still resents the way that humans rule the world and suppress other races, he also understands that this is not true for all of them, and learns that other humans also have to suffer from their system as well. As a result, he overcomes his first moral need and starts dedicating his life to creating a more positive world for the fishmen. Now, however, we see Jinbei being caught in between his resentment and his wish to make peace with the humans. Working for the world government violates his ideals, and he emotionally suffers from supporting their cause in exchange for his people's safety. This is where Marineford comes into play. He decides to trust and support Whitebeard, who has decided to put Fishman Island under his protection. Now he has actually formed a connection with humans that value him and his people solely for who they are as a person. And again, he has to see them being crushed by the world government. So now, having lost his strongest lead to a peaceful and friendly future through Whitebeard's death, Jinbei now needs to find new hope for his dream. And that brings us to Fishman Island, where Jinbei truly befriends Luffy, whom he had learned to respect during the war. Here he sees someone who truly doesn't know or understand the concept of racism, but only wants to help people and sail the sea together with his crew. That this crew involves a talking reindeer, a skeleton, and a cyborg, as well as people like Nico Robin that have also suffered heavily from the cruelty of the world government, are all factors that have a big impact on Jinbei. But probably none as big as meeting Nami, a human who now in return has suffered heavily under the retaliating hate that Arlong has brought with him towards the humans. Seeing that Nami bears no ill feelings towards his people anymore, despite what happened to her, truly makes Luffy and the Straw Hats the new sources for his hope. All that is left for him now to do is fulfilling his dream and also find joy for himself once again in his life that he has solely dedicated to others. Seeing on Whole Cake Island how Big Mom's forced idea of a coexistence of the races doesn't work, finally being able to officially join the Straw Hats was a big step in that direction for him. And the great thing with Jinbei is that with this final need for happiness still not fulfilled, he actually has some real character development left in the story for him to happen, making him a very fascinating character. So,
Who the hell is Jinbei?
Jinbei is one of the most symbolic and moral-heavy characters in the entire series. Not only has he shaped some of the most significant events in the current storyline, but he also has been going through one of the most complex and long-lasting character arcs in the story by far. He has managed to break the wheel of hate between fishmen and humans and is now striving for a better and safer future for his people, where equal and peaceful coexistence between the races is possible. So why did Oda make an exception with Jinbei and didn't let him join the crew right away? Reason 1 was the purpose of the time skip. After the time skip, it was Oda's task to show us how each of the Straw Hats had grown and how the crew of rookies has now become a real pirate crew that can play with the pros. Secondly, the complex political structures of the New World with all the players involved would have been far less interesting to explore with someone in the crew who knew about all of this. But most importantly, it was Jinbei's selfless personality that led him to prioritize the well-being of his people over joining in on the adventure right away. Keeping his relationship with Big Mom was crucial to not spark conflict for his country. As a result, he hasn't joined up with the crew yet. He doesn't feel like a real Straw Hat yet and still has gotten way more character development and action than some other crew members. I feel like that is the main reason many people have difficulties accepting Jinbei as part of the crew. However, I will promise you that once he joins up with the crew, that will change. Because not only does our whale shark fulfill all requirements to be part of the crew, he also brings a lot more to the story in terms of symbolism and personality. He's someone living for his captain and his people, a truly selfless man. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. I know that this video was a little different than usual. Nonetheless, I think it shows us how much thought Oda puts into many of the concepts he introduces. What are your thoughts on Jinbei? Let me know in the comments below. A big shout out goes to my friend Brago, who was kind enough to help me with this project. In the unlikely case you don't know who he is, make sure to check out his amazing work on his 2 channels. The link is right at the beginning of the description. Also, if you enjoyed this content and want to see more of it, please don't forget to smash that like button, share the video and subscribe to be notified for any future content of mine. Or dislike, don't share and unsubscribe. It's a free world, people. I hope to see you around next time, and until then, have a great week. Oh yeah, and don't forget to turn your notifications on, cause YouTube can sometimes be forgetful. Bye!